Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I want to start this episode with a scene. Picture this: you're standing in line, waiting to get into a venue to see Stella Standing Bear. The energy is buzzing, you're surrounded by people who love the music, love the culture, and you're just excited to be there. And while waiting in that line, a light skinned native woman with blonde hair and blue eyes gets approached by an older lady. The woman looks her up and down, takes in her features, and asks a question that stops the room cold. Are you white passing, or do you just like native music? Now, without skipping a beat, the woman looks back at her and corrects her gently, but firmly. She says, I'm native. That moment, and specifically those choice of words, is what we're going to be unpacking today. Because there's an important phrase that we need to begin adopting and using in lieu of the terms quote unquote white passing. And that term is white presenting. And there is a key difference between those two phrases, white passing versus white presenting. It isn't just a matter of semantics. It is a massive, deeply personal boundary, and it opens up a conversation about identity, genetics, and colonialism that a lot of people outside the indigenous community completely fail to understand. Let's break down why that distinction matters so much, because the word passing carries a heavy, painful historical ghost. Historically, quote unquote passing implies an action, it implies a choice. It comes from an era where people of color actively hid their heritage, cut ties with their families, and blended into white society just to survive, to get a job, or to escape horrific violence. Passing sounds like a deception, a secret you're keeping, or a deliberate attempt to assimilate. And in some cases, that is the truth for certain people's ancestors. But I want you to consider the many reasons why that might have been. But when you say white presenting, you are shifting the narrative entirely. Presenting isn't an action that you take, it's an acknowledgement of how the world looks at you. It says, yes, biologically and genetically, I have light skin. Maybe I have blonde hair or blue eyes. That is how my DNA expressed itself, and that is how society perceives me. But my appearance is not my identity, and I am not hiding who I am. I am right here, and I exist. But let's get into the raw reality of this, because navigating life as a white presenting native person is incredibly rough. It's exhausting, and it is a unique kind of isolation. First, there's the constant imposter syndrome and hyper-vigilance. Imagine feeling like you have to carry your family tree in your back pocket just to prove you belong in spaces that are rightfully yours. Every time you enter a cultural space, a powwow, or a concert, there's this low level anxiety that someone is going to gatekeep you. You are constantly anticipating the question, waiting for the skeptical look, wondering if you are quote unquote native enough in the eyes of total strangers. Second, you deal with the pain of lateral violence. It's one thing when white society doesn't understand native identity. We almost expect that lack of education, but it cuts entirely different when the questioning comes from within your own community or from other marginalized groups. When an elder or a peer questions your belonging based entirely on a physical checklist, it feels like a rejection from the very home you were trying to hold on to. And third, there's the burden of uninvited privilege. As a white presenting person, you navigate the world with white privilege. You aren't targeted by systemic racism on the street based on your looks, but that privilege comes with a dark side. You become a ghost in the room. People will say horrific racist things right in front of you because they assume that you are one of them. You are forced to constantly play the role of educator, pulling the emergency brake on conversations, throwing up your hands and saying, actually, that's my family you're talking about. It means you are never fully at peace because your skin color acts as a shield you didn't ask for while your identity is constantly erased. And here's the kicker, and the piece of this that everyone needs to understand. When we demand that Native people look like a stereotype, we are doing the work of colonialism for them. The entire goal of the colonial system, specifically through things like blood quantum laws, was the total erasure of indigenous people. The math was simple and cruel. Dilute the bloodlines through forced assimilation, eventually, on paper, Native people ceased to exist. No more tribes, no more sovereign land rights, no more treaties to honor. So when society looks at a blonde, blue-eyed Shillagi woman and says, "You don't look Native," they are falling right into that trap. They are operating on a visual checklist created by Hollywood and old history textbooks. Genetics doesn't care about stereotypes. DNA is a lottery. You can have the exact same ancestry, the exact same lineage, and the exact same cultural upbringing as someone with dark hair and brown eyes, but your genes just shuffle differently. Phenotype, how you look, is not a reflection of your sovereignty, your bloodline, or your spirit. Claiming your identity when you don't fit the visual mold isn't an aesthetic choice. It is a quiet, fierce act of resilience. It is saying, my ancestors survived everything they went through so that I could be here exactly as I am, and I refuse to let a stranger's narrow imagination erase that. So the next time you see someone who doesn't fit your mental image of a culture, pause. Remember that belonging isn't written in the shade of someone's skin or the color of their hair. It is written in their history, their community, and their truth. I want to hear from you guys on this one. Have you ever had to correct someone about how you present versus how you actually are? How did you handle the gatekeeping? Drop your comments below, or feel free to reach out to me through other means. Until next time, keep holding your ground, stand in your truth, and I'll talk to you soon. As always, the mind is the most important story that we'll ever tell. This has been a solo episode of The Mind of Cy Marie. Catch you next time.